Quiet on the set. Here we go. Five, four, three, two, one. Hello, everybody. I'm Dear Myrtle, your not so retired friend in genealogy. Welcome to Myrt's Book Club. Somebody wanted to know if this was going to be about genealogy. Yeah, it's totally about genealogy. And one way you can tell is that the book we are working from, a couple of chapters at a time, is Dr. Thomas W. Jones's Mastering Genealogical Proof. I have a shout out to Deneen, who hasn't yet joined us on the panel. I know she submitted her homework. I know she was there for Mondays with Myrt. Uh, Deneen, if you can't find the link to get into StreamYard, it is in our Facebook private messenger. I just put the link there again. It was so long ago that, yeah, it scrolled off. Now, here's how book club works. It's a little different. We don't change the book every week, and we only talk about one point that inspired a panelist, and we have 3 panelists that are submitting. And our point in doing this is to lead you toward taking, well, first of all, buying the book, because it's only one of multiple points in 2 or 3 or 4 chapters that we happen to be discussing at one time. Buy the book, but also consider joining one of the Mastering Genealogical Proof study groups. And this is one that I recommend. And she does have openings. Cindy Ingalls, yes, of Cindy's List, is hosting it. It's on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. So that's what? 2, 3, 4. That's 5 p.m. Eastern. And what they do is take each chapter 1 week at a time, and they work through the homework that Dr. Jones has set up. It's his case study, it's his thinking, etc. So that's the difference between what we're doing and what actual Mastering Genealogical Proof study group is all about. Now, I have done 4 of those over the years. One of them was specifically with a bunch of UK, Ireland-based people, because some of their citations are a little bit different, and they use terms slightly differently than we do. And then 3 of the series of our Gen Proof study groups were for just anyone who wanted to come. And it's definitely worth the $95 to spend the time to go with Cindy through Dr. Jones's thinking on the subject. He's a smart guy, and we can't do that kind of in-depth work and record it as readily as you can when you attend this kind of a study group where you use his case studies. We're using our case studies, and where it has inspired, in this case, Ellen and Maria and Deneen, if she could make it over here. Yeah, Carrie Taplin is also working with Cindy. Highly recommend it, Melinda said. Okay, so the link for the homework, let me get that link. I had said I was going to keep it the same every week. Well, it got a little confusing, and maybe it's old Myrt, but here's the homework link. And maybe Melinda, thank you for working on the YouTube side for me, dear. If you could periodically share that again, I'd appreciate it. This is what the homework looks like. Let me pull this over. And I'm looking at it in Word because then I can do something at the end that we're going to do with Maria's homework. Yes, you get everything, the total story of how book club works, our schedule, and here I'm inserting the links to our video discussion and letting you know what pages out of this full syllabi homework compilation concerns that chapter. Now, here we are on February 3rd. This is what we're working on. And so every week I'll give you a slightly different link. So it will have everything we've already done with the video discussion links and go from there. So we know that our handout we need to get to page 9 to start with our chapter 3, chapter 4. So close your eyes. I'll scroll ahead. 2, 3, 4. Let's see, where are we? There we go. Okay. So Ellen gets to be first. And Deneen, if you're having trouble, go ahead and write to me in the chat. We can always delete them. Yeah. There she is. She made it, and it's totally okay. I should have sent it again last night. I don't know why, but you're here. So relax, and we're going to talk with Ellen. So Ellen's homework could actually be an example of a number of things. But Ellen, tell me where you're coming from, and you've done a really cool table here with information that you've found. What's happening? Talk to me.
Well, this is a project that I've have ongoing for years, and it's about my great-grandfather, William Beaton. And one of the questions is, like, when was he born? But right now for this one, I'm saying, where was he born? Mm-hmm. And I talk about reasonably exhaustive search because I've been searching for years. I'm like going, when am I actually done? Because I always imagine somebody laying on their desk in exhaustion, and so I thought, well, I'll make a table of all the things that I have, documents that I have and what they say, and see if I can decide from there.
Makes sense. So here we have 1881. It said he was born in Ontario. It's original.
I stumble on this all the time. I have to keep going back to what's original, what's direct, what's indirect. I struggle with those. I don't know why it bugs me. But.
Yeah, let me pull this up. I added this to your homework because it helped me to be able to see Elizabeth Schoen Mill's diagram of sources, information. Let me zoom, or there we go. Can y'all see that pretty well?
Yeah.
Information could be primary, firsthand, secondary, undetermined. We don't know who the informant is. And the evidence could be direct, meaning it explicitly states this is where he was born. Of course, it could be false still, because we don't know the informant. It could be indirect, where it's implied, like if Joe and Mary are refer to each other as siblings, and it's not the South in the 17 and early 1800s, south of the U.S. states, where the term sisters and cousins is very blurred, where they are known as siblings, recognized that way. And you don't know Joe's parents, but you know Mary's because there was a document that directly stated that she was their child. Then you could indirectly decide, if they're siblings and that's her parents, then it's usual and likely that that set of parents are in fact his. Doesn't always get to be true, does it?
No.
Okay, so back to you. And I'll get back up to your list here. I love this list. I think you did an excellent job. What happened with Scotland?
Out of the blue, and I mean, the 1931 census, I think, came out last year on Ancestry and the other sites. And on that document, it says Scotland. I have a suspicion that it might have been my great-grandfather's second wife or his daughter from that marriage that answered that question, because that was totally knew. I'd never seen, you know. And they also said that he came from Scotland in 18, I think it was 71. Or yeah, 71.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, whether they knew something that I don't know, but that's not what he put on every other record. You know, his date
Yeah.
of birth is always sketchy because he always, it was always ever changing. And that might have been because, either he didn't know exactly when he was born, or maybe sometimes it was more convenient to be born a different day.
I know. It's like women and their birth year or age on a census record. Deneen is in the wings and she's cracking up right now, folks. All right. So, in addition to your summarizing just briefly for yourself, I mean, we could have all the images, and this could be a 432-page homework that you're submitting, but
Yeah.
you've summarized it enough. You did the next thing, which is really interesting because we're noticing things like Kingston, Pittsburgh, you know, yeah.
And
You
Pittsburgh
started,
actually is a part of Kingston now.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But that's what I want to talk about is this part where you started enumerating your thoughts about what was in that chart. You're analyzing it. So
Right.
talk to me more about these evidence items. Um, Pittsburgh and Ontario, this is where you're talking about
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Pittsburgh is actually a township that later became part of Kingston. And so, you know,
So that's a very important way, a good example of explaining um, county boundary changes or historical boundary changes.
because I think he was probably actually, that's where he lived or when he was born in
Hmm.
Pittsburgh. And
Hmm.
then I think for later records, it was just easier to say Kingston, you know.
Yeah, it's like when I lived in South Jordan, Utah, in Salt Lake County, I would just say I lived in Salt Lake. It's a suburb. It is a
Mhm.
town on its own right. But, I just say I'm from Salt Lake, and people in the genealogy world know that I'm at least within driving distance of that family
Right,
search
right.
library. So we tend to do things like that, and maybe they did in their time period. Now, this other one where you said it kind of got caught between two pages, where you
Okay.
said you didn't know who the informant was in 1931. Talk to me about that. They're the
Well,
ones that said Scotland.
yeah, and like I say, I think I I don't know, but I believe that it might have been either his William Beaton's second wife who
Hmm.
said that, and whether she knew something, I don't know. Maybe she did, or maybe it was his daughter, and I don't like. I'm not really sure where that information came from.
You're right. So it's a matter of you got some conflicting information on that chart up above,
I know
and
we're
now
going
you're
to deal with conflicting later, aren't we?
I know, and that's why this homework could be a universal homework assignment. You
Yeah,
could use it again. And the whole point was this is that the part of what Dr. Jones was talking about this is chapter 3, I think, that
right.
exhaustive searches um, could go on forever, but
Because I thought it was done until that census came out. Or I thought I was pretty sure of my what I thought until
right.
that came
Well,
out.
and if it was his daughter, she wasn't there when he was
No,
born.
and neither was his wife. But
And
then she should know something.
well, and she would also know if he spoke with a Scottish brogue, with that
Mhm,
Scottish accent. Um, and but maybe it was the neighbor who gave the information
exactly.
and who says, "Oh, I don't know. I think he came from Scotland. I don't know. I can. It is questionable,
Yeah.
but it's the only outstanding questionable. And so your current thinking is that It is Kingston.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. But you have some limitations here.
Yeah. That's the only thing about this is because when you go through the 6 pieces that you're supposed to be proving, I don't have
Yeah.
anything that like there is no birth certificate or registration that I'm aware of.
Yeah. And you don't know of a christening record.
No, because I don't even know if that's his name. His name, like he was adopted into the family that he shows in the census. So, um, you
It's
know,
getting very confusing.
I know
Yes.
he's my most complicated person.
So you're doing what cousin Russ is doing. This is your current thinking
Right,
that he was born in Kingston, Ontario, whoever
right,
this person is.
right.
We didn't ask who are the parents.
No,
Thank
because
heavens.
we're
That's
still
really up for question.
that's a
Yeah.
big that's still ongoing.
Yeah. All right. So literally, I have in the front of Elizabeth shares this freely. This is her. Whoops. Let me pull this back down. This is evidence. The evidence analysis process map. Elizabeth Schoen Mill's website, evidenceexplained.com. Let me give you all this. Did I give you this link? No. Let me give you this link on the YouTube side. Um, she has this on the inside cover of her book, Evidence Explained, each edition. I uh, printed it and laminated it and keep it by my desk because sometimes when you're in the weeds of all those documents,
Mhm.
you get confused. Is a derivative record? For instance, the U.S. Census records that we're looking at typically are derivatives. They're not the original that the enumerator went around and took. They're
Oh,
copies of it. Now, I'm not too sure about about the 1790. That may be the actual original. The reason I say derivative is that let's say 1850 or 1860. The numerator enumerated. Then he returns that book and they make 2 copies, one for the state and one for the federal government. Because here in the United States, it was necessary to determine how many congressmen you could have, not senators, but Congress, go to Washington, D.C. to represent the state. And so all 3 parties, the county in question, the state, and the federal government, all 3 of those parties had a vested interest in knowing exactly who was living there in that time period. And so what we're looking at that has been digitized from microfilm is what was at the National Archives that came from the Census Bureau in Washington, D.C. So we're looking at the copy. Now, I
okay.
once had the opportunity to look at an original. It was in a courthouse in Iowa, and it was about 95 degrees and no air conditioning, and they had the books um, up in the attic.
Oh wow.
So I did not want to go up there because I was already dying just talking to this wonderful gal at the desk who also helped us with land records. So sometimes people have been able to look at a derivative and compare it to the original. I just wasn't willing to go climb the stairs. I could walk then, but that would be an example of a derivative. And
Okay.
then an authored work or it could be an extraction at Ancestry or Family Search, or, or even what you've done is part of a narrative or authored work. Yeah. So this, guys, I can't tell you enough. I can't stress enough. Print this out. Save the copy. Copy the image. Save the image as. and then print it out and keep it in a top loading sheet protector right next to your computer. Just don't block the part of your computer on the side where the fan is because you don't want to burn your hard drive.
Yeah,
All right.
that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Okay. So this is your current thinking that he was born in Kingston, Ontario.
Right.
And, all of this information could be arranged. You could have ChatGPT take that table and this and make it in narrative format. So you could just copy and paste it and put it into notes
Hmm.
for the birth information. That's all you're thinking in one place.
Right.
Excellent, excellent work. When we were talking during Mondays with Myrt today, he suggested having ChatGPT 4.0 return the information with 2 columns in a table, and it's a great way to organize thinking and make it easy to see. And you're telling yourself, it's indirect, it's direct, it's a derivative. Yeah, is that the letter that we talked about last week, this
Yes.
derivative? Yeah,
Yeah. Because that was, yeah.
yeah.
And then
And
I
then
even went so far as to look at each of his children's marriage registrations, because one of the questions is, where was your father born? So,
yeah, and she said Canada.
yeah.
And it is tricky and you had challenges, but this is the way to do it. And it is, and I would date that entry that
Okay.
as of that date, that was your current thinking.
Okay.
Um, and this is a lot of work that you did, but it's necessary. Um, any other comments? Let's see what the community's saying. Just a second here. Um, all right.
I see Betty Lou made a comment.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments. Betty Lou said a table's a good idea when you have searched many records. And then she says in Scotland in 1931, Scotland could be his heritage or where his parents were born. And that's why whoever the informant is thought he might have been born in Scotland. Good point.
Right. Right.
Okay. And um, Maria, you said something. Tell me for the recording. You're muted. You need to not mute yourself. When
I'm
you're in the wings, you're muted. When you come up on the stage, it
I know, totally
automatically,
forgot.
you'll remember. It's
Um,
okay.
no, I keep that by my right here on the desk, and I'm just thinking in circles, and I loop focus, and I go down rabbit holes. I'm like, I come back, I'm like, nope, this is where I need to be. This is what I need to look at.
Hmm. Yeah, it really helps ground you. And just even the way she made things with the black boxes and the light colored lettering,
That's
it
awesome.
really helped more than just all text. It
Yeah,
really helped my brain work for my brain at least. So thank you very much, Ellen, for your
Yeah.
homework.
Thank you. It was fun.
She was first to submit this time, so I took her first. Okay, now let's scroll
awesome.
through our homework. I'll scroll before I share my screen. So we're Janine. Janine, thank you. I'm sorry if I messed up and didn't make it possible. I moved this up because this is a great story. Tell me what's happening in your homework.
Oh, well, in my homework, this was my next step in pursuing the four wives of my husband's great grandfather.
Hmm.
Uh, and I wanted the first one was the ancestor, but then I was just curious about this man. And, were all these women correct? And I solved an identity problem last week where two of them were the same woman. And then I wanted to pursue wife number 4.
Hmm.
So I found this really great funeral. I love the newspapers. Find out more dirt and clues in these. And it says, and she died at
Hmm.
12 o'clock, age 93 years, 5 months, and 7 days in 1943.
Hmm.
Horace died in 1904. And so my working hypothesis, and you can read the touching script there, but my working hypothesis is that military record I found about his Civil War was just a citation taken from her pension. Yeah, I'm taken from his pension file, and that's why the location of that was like, why Illinois? He was in Minnesota, and and why this weird location. That's how partially I got following her.
Well, pensions are interesting, and so was military service. Like, I have an ancestor, not my ancestor, research that I did for someone. We worked together on it. Um, but I could get the pension file for her. Her person lived in one state, but the adjoining state had a bounty if you signed up.
Oh.
And that was money that he could leave with his family. So they didn't always muster in like my guy did in 19th Indiana. Everybody in the 19th Indiana was in from his county. He wasn't one of those that went over the county line. You didn't have to, in the U.S. Civil War, sign up or muster in for your state of residence. You could go over one or two states wherever there was a big bounty because they needed to fill the quota. And so in order to do that, they would pay, I don't know how much money. I can't recall. It was double digits, like $50 maybe. I could be wrong.
Went a lot farther then.
Sure did. That's for sure. I keep looking out the window and it's white out, snow. I'm trying not to worry about it. But anyway, back to your homework. So, when Dr. Jones says we don't overplan, we begin with a person or a family or a location or a time frame, and we do one or more very focused, I had the word very, focused research questions. Yeah, it isn't everything you want to learn about him. It's did he have 4 wives? Did he have 3? What's going on here? As opposed to, oh, I found a land record and here's this or that. It might be that the answer is in the land record because she inherits after he passes, just saying. But right now, you put it on a to-do list so you don't go down the rabbit hole like Maria mentioned, because you're trying to methodically work through the most logical things for answering that very focused research question about the marital status and history of an individual. So you had these questions in mind. And Illinois was the thing, as opposed to growing up in Hillsborough County, New Hampshire. You may notice that I wrote out in your homework where you had abbreviated states. I write out the state. That's a good practice because people like Ellen might not know that state abbreviation. But I couldn't do it for Canada, let alone people from France that may have a common ancestor. Okay, so talk to me some more about your homework.
Well, it was these questions. What the identity of Horace? Basically, was this record even belonging to him? And so that led me to her because in the table I did the last time, there were the 2 records pointing to Kilmundy, Indiana, that related to her. So I thought, let's follow her. And that led to the funeral and that lovely description of eating her noonday meal as usual, laid down for a short while and fell asleep and slept right into eternity.
Yeah, that nap after lunch, you better watch out. Especially if you're 93 something.
Yes. And so Anyhow, I found it really touching, and she got front page. I think on the second,
Well,
I
yeah, let
included.
me show you this. Um, this is where I got the date, that 1943.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was something to have somebody live that many years.
Well,
But anyway, back up here.
mhm.
You had you have some tasks still to do for yourself. So you do have a to-do list.
Yes, I do. Because I make a note of that to jog my memory the next time, because we're juggling different things here, and so going through, the site that's actually citations for the things I'm riffing about, like that's with Civil War record. I have no citations,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to do also the map of how far it is from all these places are from each other, to just
Mm-hmm.
get that in my head. I love the maps and that history, and so I'm wanting to do that. That the hill. Actually, I have a historic map of Hillsborough County, and the Langdells are
Mm-hmm.
all there's like a bunch of them, and then
Oh, good.
yeah, no, so it's lovely, and and then the girls they married into are like the other farm down the road. Um,
Makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, no, it all makes a lot of sense. So I think that's those were I have some vision issues here, um, but again, just finding the sources, rereading, a go away.
I think that's your
My
phone.
phone, it's my phone, and I can't get rid of it
All right, just
sometimes.
a second. Well, I'm going to mute you for a minute while you're doing that, while it rings, and let me make a point. What was the point? Maps are really important. Um, and finding a map at the time period is especially important. Now, Deneen was referring to a map that showed who the owners were at a point in time. And we typically do see those, even in colonial time periods here in the US. I can't speak for other countries. Ellen, do you have land ownership maps over up there in Canada?
Yeah, I actually have one of Kingston framed in my
Wow.
office. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it has
Okay.
William Beaton Sr.'s land.
Okay. That's way cool. One of the things that happened to me, and I'm pretty sure your phone's quit ringing, so I'll bring you on in a second, Deneen. Um, one of the things that got me, I went to Lyon County. I don't remember. I think it's Iowa, but it might not be. Anyway, at the Historical Society, they told me to go to this cemetery to find the burial place um, that was mentioned in an obituary that I found in their obituary collection. And I'm like, okay, what's the address of the cemetery? Well, there was no address. You had to go across the main county road, up this way, and the first possible right turn, which was several fields, several acres north. You hit a T, they said, turn right. By now we're on a gravel road. And she said it will curve around, and I could see the curve. That was good. And then the cemeteries on the right side of the road. And it probably had 40 tombstones. That was it. And my question was, how in how did they get him from this town to that cemetery? Because it took us in 20th century, we did it in the 20th century. Um, took us about 35 minutes to get there. I can't imagine horse drawn wagon with the coffin, how long it would take to get there. And then Mr. Myrt, who happens to love railroads, pulled up a railroad map. And there was a literal mesh of railroads that could have gotten that from that coffin in a much more orderly fashion to that area in Admire. That was the name of the town. And it wasn't a town. We went farther north and turned left on a street. Again, there's no street signs. You have to know. And there were 4 or 5 houses, and that was it. And they had more people in the cemetery than they had in the houses. But I digress. All right. All I basically did was fill in and keep you muted. And so I've unmuted you, Deneen, so we can get back to your homework. So we were
No,
dealing. Go ahead.
oh well, no, this is fine. I love that more people in the cemetery than in the town. I've been places like that for
Yeah.
our people up in the gold country.
Yeah.
And well, I think that the main points were the to-dos here, of what the close reading and the historic maps for these 3 places that I'm studying.
Mhm.
'Cause I haven't gone to the wiki. And I haven't to do all the background. I haven't a lot of things I haven't done that I should to fill this out. But the really good news is that I think I'm finding my voice, because my motivation here is to do some work that my husband's nephews and nieces,
Mhm.
when they're teens, they might be interested, and they're
Pray for it. Yes.
and I didn't want the one link to the licensed privateer William Langdale
Oh.
to be a flawed link out there. If they ever wanted to do DAR, the children DAR things.
Mhm.
And
And privateers were good people.
yes, yeah.
They were the enemy's enemy, pirates, but
Yeah.
privateers were authorized by the government to seize the ship and confiscate a percentage of the goods that were in that ship, trying to go back, for instance, to England. So very interesting. I didn't put the link, but you mentioned the research wiki. The Family Search
Yes.
Research Wiki is what she was talking about, and it has information on over 120 countries throughout the world. We are a global community, and arguably, regardless of anybody's religious orientation, anybody in the world of genealogy recognizes that the Family Search Research Wiki will mention things not only part of Family Search's library or online collection, but what's necessary in other um, resources throughout the world. For instance, right now, just yesterday, people were beginning to notice that at the National Archives of the United States, all of the census images have been removed. Remember, there's some things happening in DC. And yeah, it's a little frustrating. Luckily, copies of those are at our Ancestry, and Find My Past even has some of the U.S. Census, of course, and Family Search and Ancestry. And I also think over at My Heritage. Yeah, it's a challenge to keep up with where things are and what's available. Let's see. Let's see. A couple of interesting things. So, Ellen, you were mentioning citations, and that is the second of the 2 chapters to be discussing, but nobody happened to pick a citation. However, Maria has a challenge for me, and we will be discussing citations anyway in just a moment. Ellen, you use Site Builder, and that's
Yeah.
from our friends in Australia.
Right. And yeah. And
Site-builder.com.
since I started using that, I probably do citations more than I did before, because I just found, I mean, I know just need the who, what, where, when, and that kind of thing, but it just makes it so much easier, because it's, again, where you're looking through a book trying to figure out exactly the organizational, and I just want to do research. I don't want to
I kind of like using it because it's independent of my genealogy software fields for
Right.
sources, which don't GEDCOM at all. They get all scrambled no matter what. It's just a pain. But I want to annotate my photos with the citation. And I've
Right.
taught people how to do that over the years, to pull down and add a text box. And I like the ability to independently craft a citation. So
Yeah,
I
because
agree with you.
you're
That's
truly building it, because it's like, pick a book. Oh, what kind of book was it? This, and it just builds it along.
mm-hmm,
And they
mm-hmm.
have a free and a paid version.
Yeah, let me pull it up so we can do some brand recognition. Site builder. Okay. Yeah, here we go. And I'll bring it up here. Not that one. Come in. I don't want that. All right, let me go back. That was, here we are. Family search. Boy, everybody and their cousin has visited them. Site builder. I think it's just .com, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get it?
No.
I can put it in the
You
private
know what
chat.
it's doing? You know what it's doing? It's correcting spelling to SITE. And it's
Okay.
site, CITE-builder.com.
Right.
Don't give me a hard time.
I have it in our private chat.
Okay, thank you. That helps. I'm just couldn't get there from here today. Well,
Yeah.
remember, I'm on a different computer and my office, you can see behind me, is not all put together yet. But anyway, let me share my screen.
Yeah,
There we
Jenny
go.
and
That's what it
Andy
looks
have done
like.
an excellent job.
Yep, yep. And there's both the blue, the basic version, and the premium version, and you want to subscribe to it.
Yeah.
So I'll put it out on the YouTube side. Thanks for doing that. You're getting better at this than I am, and I'm proud
Well,
of you.
no, thank you.
All right, so we got a couple of questions before we move to Maria's homework. Okay. Um, let's see. Gwen says, I love railroads too. Sacramento was the Southern Pacific, has a Southern Pacific library near the Railroad Museum. That's cool. Betty Lou is saying, what also helps is having a son-in-law as a physician and the railroad, which is probably why my second great grandfather died in Kansas and was buried in Ohio. Yeah. And they put him in pickle barrels,
Oh, wow.
to get him home. That was in 1910, Betty says. Yeah. Okay. Deneen, all right, let's do this. Let's let Deneen rest, unless you have anything more to say. By the way, very good on your homework. Very good thinking and some good discussion thereof. She's shaking her head no. All right. So, Maria, it's you and me, kiddo.
Okie dokie.
Let me, I love it. Well, part of it is I kind of know some of what you're talking about. All right. So, talk to me about planning.
So the more I get into genealogy, the more you plan ahead of time, the less time you waste. The less it just, and then you know when you have arrived because
You can see your progress.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay. Now, one of the reasons that Maria's homework has unpaginated the locations at about 18% is that she's looking at the book through Kindle. So when she's giving you a citation, she can't give you a page number for the quotes that she's referring to. And she's working out of chapter 3 as well. But interestingly enough, because each of our panelists is referring to something in these two chapters that particularly resonated with them, where they could use an example for their own research, it's a completely different homework assignment, as you will see. So talk to me, Maria.
So when I came across, I mean, I'd already done a bunch of research on my husband's grandmother. And as I was looking, and I found lots and lots of records, and I started looking through my mother-in-law's uh, family sheet records.
Mm-hmm.
I came across this note, and I'm like, it said that he had 3 wives. And I was thinking, well, I've only found 2, and I've pretty much scoured those parishes.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, it's possible. I don't know 100% if he didn't, and maybe it's out there. Maybe there's somebody else out there. So I made a plan of what I was going to do, and
Mm-hmm.
but then as I dissected the records I had, I was like, there is no way. I mean, 99% sure there was no way that he had 3 wives. So
Okay.
yeah.
This is how citations were made. This is how it was fill in the blank. Let me show the other picture. Where is it? It's somewhere here. They were oblong family group sheets. And here's the sources of information. There's the other marriages, and you gave us a zoomed in view of it. And here's the little space. Like 3 postage stamps would fit in that place for other marriages. So they couldn't, so your mother-in-law could not give you a table like Ellen showed us,
Right.
or couldn't include images like Deneen, the front page of the newspaper to get the date and the actual obituary itself. You couldn't even fit a transcription of that 93-year-old woman's obituary in there. There's not much room. All right, let's get back up to where you are in your thinking. So I can't even exactly read all that these are. It's some of it.
So I
Well,
think she's saying that, like, in the first marriage, there's 4 children,
yeah,
right? And that's where her grandmother fits. And the second set is like, I don't know if that's like sister, brother.
yeah, because
And
she's
there's,
writing. Yeah, it's
and I
side.
think 7 siblings, I think it said, that are sisters and brothers.
Yeah,
And
then
then,
something here, and
yeah,
then sister and brother. Yeah,
yeah. So
and
it's
she's
true that there's the 4 and the 7 siblings there, but the third unknown, yeah.
oh, so she's saying 1 child here, 2
No,
here,
this is the
or
first
3
wife.
marriages.
There's
Oh,
the first wife, the second wife, the third wife. There's
okay.
4 kids with the first wife, 7 with the second, and unknown.
So that was her view of the family, and she wasn't there the whole time.
Well, that's what the cousin told her. She
Okay.
remembers that her dad, Edward, said, yeah, but she's been in Germany. Edward came over to Germany from Poland,
Mm-hmm.
and it would have been a long time ago. So that's just what it says.
So, Ellen's thinking, is she saying child 7, 8, and 9 were with wife number 2? Yeah, it's hard to decipher. But let's go through your homework and talk about it. So you've never found a third marriage for him, and you've done some pretty extensive research at the churches.
Right.
And from your understanding, you haven't actually gone to the churches. You've looked at digital images of parish records.
That's correct.
And do you have a concept of what percentage of all of the available churches records you could look at in the collections available to you? Like, is it 10% or 99%?
With the Polish churches there, I would probably say about, from the area where he was farming, I would probably say about 80%. I mean, there's some years that are missing, right? Some
I
years
know.
that are missing.
And my people would be in that 20% that are missing. especially when you're talking about war-torn countries like that.
Exactly. But one thing that kind of narrows it down a little bit is that he was a Protestant, and where there's a lot of Catholic churches in Poland. But sometimes when the Protestants couldn't get to a Protestant church, they would go to a Catholic church. So you can't mix those out either. So
Yeah, I know that in the western part of Germany, like the Schwarzwald area and stuff, the Jewish people had to register at the local Catholic church, and they were forced then to come up with a surname, whereas it
right,
wasn't in their culture or their tradition to have a surname.
right,
So it was, you had to know the context, the historical context of the
right.
record keeping. Wow. Okay. So back to your homework. Um, you had a very interesting, let me try to scroll here. This is your plan. So talk to me about the plan.
Well, I knew I needed to go back because some of the records I didn't have translated 100%. So I needed to go back and I'd had them all translated 100% in case there was other clues.
Yes.
And so then I just started again doing timelines and writing things down to see if it was possible that he had a wife in between marriages or before marriages. And I just sat with the information that I had to analyze those first because I
Could be a liaison and no marriage. You never know.
Yeah. So I just
and part of that is when we all do this. When I got a death record, I was looking for two things. I was looking for the date of death and the cause of death because my dad's a doctor and we were compiling our medical family history. This was centuries ago, right? Literally in the previous century. And I didn't look at the address of what was his usual address versus he died in the hospital, which we needed to have. I needed to have that when I wanted to go find the house where he lived. That gave me, I wanted to do the house part of the story. And then, of course, there's who are the parents. So we tend to look at records initially for the question we're trying to answer then. And now you're ready to look at a more complete translation. And at that time, you weren't speaking any or reading any Polish per se, were you, when you first started this?
Not when I first started. I knew a little bit when I did this analysis. I now know a lot more than I did then. But yeah, you're right. I was just trying to find people and their names, but not really analyzing the record.
The whole, everything the record had to say.
Yeah. So that was the plan, is to really and when I did, I found out that it was very, very unlikely that there was 3 because the first marriage said that he was a bachelor. It doesn't mention anything about him being a widower at age 20. And there's children's birth records to both of them. And then when he got married again, it mentions his first wife, Justina. So if he'd been married that short little bit when she died and when he got married again, that would be really weird that they don't mention that mysterious wife. And then when he dies, his widow is Justina. Again, there's no mention of anybody else. None.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but it didn't happen in our family. We were very good about mentioning previous spouses and these are the children of one marriage and these of another when our parents passed away. But it depends on who pays for the obituary. And you've heard things in the news where the stepmother does all kinds of things in mentioning family relationships and ignores the other part of the family, his legitimate heirs. Karen is saying it was in a newspaper article that directed her to her maternal grandfather having been married and divorced before the grandmother, her mom didn't even know this. Without the articles, she wouldn't have even thought to look. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part of that reasonably exhaustive search.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And that's, and that's why, even though I had analyzed it, and I'm like, you just never know. So I did go and I researched all the Protestant churches that were by there and looked in all their records in the time period that could happen. And I couldn't find any children or any wives. Even though I kind of like narrowed it down,
mhm.
I still went and I looked.
So is this a common surname in Poland? It's
No,
unusual.
yeah, very.
Hmm. Okay.
Well,
So
and part of that is because he was Protestant and not native Polish per se. He was Germanically descended and living in, so he was kind of like a
So
minor.
these were the Volga Germans, the ones that were sent over to the Germans were sent over to that part to
Possibly,
populate the area historically, a couple of
possibly,
generations back.
yeah.
Sounds like it. So I want to, before we get to the citation thing, I want to bring this up again because we just this moment talked about how you might look at a document for one bit of information, like the death date and the cause of death, and completely ignore the information about the parents or the address of where the person lived or what his occupation was. This is where it gets tricky when we're analyzing a document because the primary firsthand information from the doctor or the coroner who sets the cause of death, that's one part of the death certificate. That information, not the death certificate, the original record, but the information in the record is firsthand. But if the daughter is giving his birth date or mentioning his parents in the original death certificate, if she got it wrong because she wasn't there when her dad was born, that's secondhand information. And luckily, here in the US, there's that area that tells you who the informant is. And so you can't say that an original document like a death record is totally reliable primary information. No, some of the information in it is secondhand information provided by an informant, as opposed to the doctor. I can hear typing. So
That was me. Sorry, I was answering, but he was
that's, oh,
off
okay.
mute.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. All right. So I had a lot of fun with your homework. Did you have anything more you wanted to say? Yeah, you need to tell me about this. Nope, you did tell me.
Yeah, we talked about that. It's fine.
Okay, and then here are the churches that you looked at.
Well,
And
those
it's
are the records. I could have listed all the other parishes, but it would have taken up like 2 pages worth of citations.
okay.
So I did not enter all the places where I got negative searches.
Okay, where you were hoping they would be, but there
Yeah,
was nothing even remotely related.
right, right.
Okay. And then we've talked about this, but I want to talk about your citation for this document because I have a
So
question.
I took that citation. I got the example from Evidence Explained, I think on page 108.
Okay,
That
let me
helps.
go get it so that
But
I
I
can.
think I made a mistake on that last date where it says year supplied. I should have not put it as I
Okay,
was looking at.
wait.
Okay,
Time out. Just a
I'm
second.
timing out. Sorry.
Just a second. Let's just take what you've got. But my evidence explained is too far away. Where is it? I've got to find it. It's what's
It's not
hopefully
the
we'll
new. It's not the new Evidence Explained. It's the.
all right. Well, we'll do it without. Here's the thing. I know that your mother-in-law has passed away.
Yes.
I wouldn't normally know that, but I happen to know you, so I know that.
Right.
Well, let me try to scroll up slightly. So this was the family group sheet that you're talking about,
Yeah.
that full family group sheet. And
Yeah.
it's from a publication known as Family Charts and Group Sheets. Okay. And it was, and you added that it looked like it was from 1806 to 2000, which is something we can do. We can do that when it's not a titled thing. We can add that scope.
Because
Now,
she's covering years from 1806 to 2000.
I get that.
Okay.
So when you say supplied by Tegmeyer, I'm assuming you're talking about Matilda. Is that correct? And not you?
Yes. Right.
Okay, so that makes sense. So her address for private use, she's dead.
Right.
You have it in your possession now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Matilda's the one that created it.
Right.
Okay. We get that because this position here that's the author position or the compiler position. All right.
Right.
And you put a little discursive note, but that's okay because it doesn't matter. But we know that it is a group of family charts and group sheets covering this time period. We know that you have it. So technically speaking, you should say from the library of Maria or author.
Okay.
But I would say Maria Tegmeyer because author gets confused with Matilda.
Yeah.
You're the author of this homework. You're the creator of this homework. And address for private use makes sense because we want to protect your address because you are a living individual. And that's why we do that. Now, I happen to recognize this as the town
Right.
where you happen to live right now. And you have already given me, I think, your address for your new house, which you're moving into this month, right? Still, theoretically, possibly,
Yes.
hopefully. Yay.
Yep.
Okay. So what the heck is this 1985 doing here?
Yeah, that's my mistake. So if you
Okay.
look at, if I'm looking at the page, there's a year supplies, but it's under the source entry and they put that there. But it's supposed to be year supplied under
Okay, but you supplied it to us in
yeah,
2024.
I copied and pasted that from another citation that I was doing for something else and just filled it in, and I neglected to update that 1985. So that's my bad. I totally
Okay.
picked up. You just delete it.
Okay, now, if you had looked at it but
Yeah.
didn't have a copy of it, you only had, I mean, the original was still, she was still alive, and the last time you looked at it and made this digital copy was in 1985, then you would put that it was in her, that number would, the 1985 could go there. And
Right.
then you could even make a discursive note that you saw her in person. She was, like I'm thinking of my grand aunt Grace, who was blind. She died around 100 years of age, but her mind was sharp as a tack. And so that could be in the discursive note that you met her in 1985. You snapped pictures with your not digital camera and have since digitized the photos.
Right.
So the last time you saw the original was in 1985 at her house and etc.
Yeah.
So
No,
you get these distinctions.
right. No, I
Mm.
totally did not realize I didn't look at that citation closely enough. So that's
Yeah.
my fault.
And this is a good break there because right there is the semicolon.
Right.
And I have seen other samples where that's a period.
Right.
To make it distinctly, it's a two-part citation. This is what it is. Here's the book. Here's the unpublished manuscript that you saw.
Right.
And now we're using it, and you happen to have it in your possession in 2024.
Yep.
I think I have a citation like that for one of my family Bible entries, where in the days when we used typewriters, and I made a photocopy of the title page, and above it I put family Bible in possession of and my name. And in those days, we put the whole address and then the date.
Yeah.
And I always giggle about it. But
Yeah.
anyway, golly, what a great job on the homework. And thank you for this discussion about how the citation needs to be clearly separate, what she did and compiled versus what you have and you're sharing it. So I've slightly adjusted it.
I'm glad.
And the fact that it's perfectly appropriate for us when the thing is not titled any more than Horst Family Charts and Group Sheets, this part here, for us to add that time period there because you can. If Dr. Jones says we can and Elizabeth says we can, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Betty Lou says she's used the term in possession of before all of this as opposed to supplied by. That's what I used in my Bible notation. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Did you actually get the image or get that book from her in 1985?
Let me get back up. That 1985 was a complete mistake. It didn't
Oh,
belong in the
totally.
citation whatsoever. It was on a different citation that I cut and pasted, and
Yeah.
I just neglected to delete.
Okay. It's not a thing. And the author notes, your discursive notes as the holder of it would come after the Tokerville, Utah, USA. And sometimes that's useful, like when trying to decide how how the informant to evaluate the informant's reliability, like with my Aunt Grace versus my mother or my dad, who had different types of senility, or my stepmother who had Lewy body, she could tell you stories, but she couldn't tell you dates and would get names mixed up as to who was in that particular event, but she remembers the event.
Sure.
Yeah. Those discursive notes sometimes need to be added to a citation to help us understand the reliability. But when Matilda, who is a child on that group sheet, is she not?
No, that's actually
Different
that's a
Matilda.
child. That's a child of Michael. Her.
Okay. Yeah, because they didn't. Yeah. All right. So challenging and confusing. I hope we've made everything perfectly muddy for everybody today. What a time, what a discussion for us to have had. I really appreciate all my panelists. Thank you so much for your homework today. You all did a great job. And there's really nothing left to say, but in 2 weeks, we will be discussing then chapters 4. No, we just did 3 and 4, so it's 5. And it's confusing because we're dealing with capitalization, punctuation, other citation subtleties like that semicolon. See how this all gets intermingled? And then the publication status. Like I mentioned, those family group sheets, it's just a compiled manuscript. In fact, she didn't even put in the names of the parents of those kids on that particular family group sheet. Yeah, we'll see y'all in 2 weeks. And I'll try to be more on time. I'm just learning how to get used to 3 monitors, and we'll see if I make any progress. I'm supposed to have a tall bookshelf on that side of the room. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us today. And there's nothing left to say, but I'm Dear Myrtle, your friend in genealogy. Happy family tree climbing, everybody. That's a wrap.
Thank you very much.